The eighth floor of the tower, known as the Plains of Extinction, stretched endlessly beneath a pale sky as a group of adventurers approached an ancient obelisk. Their leader halted the march with a firm command. He reminded them they had gathered once more for the same purpose, to defeat the guardian of this floor. He carried himself with the presence of a rank 6 adventurer and the authority of the Blue Zone Guild Master, Kyojo Itsuki. Though this raid was a joint effort, he warned that none of them had the luxury of slacking off. If they failed to clear this floor, the ninth would remain forever out of reach. As the group divided to prepare, more guild members began to arrive. Itsuki glanced toward the horizon, saying it was time for them to appear. Soon enough, another guild approached, Blue Earth, led by none other than the rank 1 guild master, Narukami Subaru. Itsuki rushed over with excitement as Subaru apologized for the delay, only to be told he was actually first to arrive. Subaru mentioned that the Muram Alliance would join this time as well. Itsuki dismissed their participation, saying they were only hoping to pick up leftovers since Subaru was leading. Subaru replied that if they truly wanted scraps, they could have them. Subaru then handed him a glowing red item. Itsuki's eyes widened as he recognized it, a legendary piece of equipment called Archangel's Blessing, able to instantly restore half of one's fatigue. Itsuki was stunned that Subaru would give him such a thing. But Subaru made his intention clear: this raid would succeed no matter what. The item was merely insurance. Itsuki muttered that Subaru would probably need this as well, but Subaru calmly told him that when the battle was over, he wanted to know whether Itsuki planned to return to Blue Earth so he could give it back. If he didn't want to return, he could simply keep it. Before Itsuki could answer, a massive shadow swept over them, accompanied by a piercing screech. Subaru murmured that it had finally arrived. Itsuki admitted he didn't expect it to show up so soon. The guardian of the eighth floor, a monstrous hydra, soared overhead. Itsuki shouted for everyone to prepare as Subaru, staring upward, called the creature an ugly bastard. Lightning-tinged energy gathered in his hand as the status window declared that lightning coursed through his body. Subaru declared that today would be the day he brought the monster down. The Hydra charged a devastating breath attack. Itsuki shouted for everyone to take cover, but Subaru strode directly toward it, ignoring the warning. Itsuki demanded to know what he was thinking. Subaru simply kept walking. When the attack erupted toward them, he drew his blade and slashed, releasing an energy wave that split the Hydra's breath clean in half. The blast streaked past their forces. Itsuki could only marvel at him, and Subaru's guild members muttered that all the training had paid off. Someone asked what Subaru had handed to Itsuki earlier. Subaru replied that they would find out soon enough, then asked if they were finally ready to kill this dragon and break through the eighth floor. As Blue Earth surged forward to take the lead, members of Blue Zone remained behind, watching with thinly veiled irritation. One of Itsuki's subordinates approached, reporting that the soldiers had been placed as planned. Itsuki said it was perfect time for them to begin. The subordinate nodded, wished him luck, and disappeared into the chaos. The battle erupted in full. Subaru's guild members coordinated flawlessly. One of the Hydra's heads lunged, only for a woman to leap over it. A man yelled at her to stop attacking without warning. She retorted that such simple work didn't need announcing, then cleaved off the head in a single strike. He froze the severed section to prevent regeneration, muttering that she had no idea how stressful this was. On another side of the battlefield, a man prepared his blade and challenged a companion named Tashiya to bet on who would deal the most damage. He shattered one head's teeth with a thrust. Tashiya dove in immediately after, severing yet another head and declaring the deal settled. The loser owed dinner. The severed head flew toward the mage girl, Chino. Her teammate apologized, but she calmly told him to keep attacking as she erected a barrier to stop it from crushing her. That was when Itsuki appeared behind her, asking if she could block this as well. She had no idea what he meant until the pain hit. Blood spilled from her lips. Itsuki chided her guild for being too cocky, calling it their greatest flaw. Chino gasped Subaru's name. Subaru turned just in time to see her collapse while Itsuki smiled at him. Rage surged in Subaru's eyes, but the Hydra's next strike forced his attention forward. At the same time, memories flickered of how people were chosen by the tower, forced to climb and prepare for an unknown beginning. None knew if it was a trial or blessing, nor who created the tower or for what purpose. They only knew that the command to climb could not be defied. People from countless dimensions, Earth, Murim, Rwvwnge, Alfred, Lucan, stepped forward with a single mission: reach the top, a destination no one had ever attained. Back on the 8th floor, the battle eventually ended. The Hydra's mangled corpse sprawled across the plains, and so did many adventurers. Subaru stood among the bodies of his fallen guild members, panting, his mask cracked. He muttered that he had told them to run, calling them idiots for never listening. Everyone had believed the boss impossible to defeat, yet they had done it. But nowhere in his instructions had he told them to die. His voice was bitter as he called them morons. A status window warned that he was poisoned, his natural recovery was impossible, and his fatigue dangerously high. If he returned alive, people would no doubt say it was expected from the Master of Lightning. Reaching 100 fatigue meant certain death. Itsuki approached. Subaru demanded to know why he would do this. He needed an answer. Itsuki replied that 10 years had passed, 10 years spent rushing toward this very day. This, he said, was the only way to defeat Subaru. If he didn't lure Subaru in, those precious Blue Earth teammates would have interfered. Everything Subaru had ever given him had only tortured him further. So he chose the world over his former friend. That was all. He tossed Archangel's blessing into the air, saying Subaru wouldn't need to return it. Blue Earth would vanish along with him. Subaru shouldn't look sad, he added. Subaru would remain a hero even after death, though he wouldn't be alive to confirm it. Subaru muttered that Itsuki always talked about whatever he pleased. He pushed himself off the ground, declaring that even if he couldn't save himself now, he would not go quietly. He reached into his inventory and pulled out a weapon. Itsuki's expression twisted with panic. Subaru had retrieved Ellis, a legendary weapon capable of generating storms that blew targets away. Itsuki stammered, asking if the item still had uses left. Subaru replied that he could find out himself. The weapon still held 4 charges. Subaru aimed not at Itsuki but at his barely breathing guild members. If he could at least save them, then everything would be worth it. He fired, launching each of them into the sky. Realizing Subaru's intent, Itsuki shouted for his men to chase them, not permitting their escape. The weapon dissipated after all charges were spent. Subaru smiled, saying none of them would chase anyone, not while he was still here. He raised his hand, lightning crackling violently as the status window warned that his fatigue had reached 95. His ability, Master of Lightning Descension, activated as a torrent of lightning struck where he stood, releasing a catastrophic shockwave. Itsuki muttered that Subaru truly was stubborn. Subaru ripped out the spear embedded in him as his fatigue climbed to 96. He swung it, declaring that whatever farewell they hoped for was beyond him, but they would pay for their betrayal with their lives. No one would leave without his permission. The surrounding adventurers realized they needed to end him and charged. Subaru erased the first man with a single strike. He said weaklings could never kill him. But once Itsuki moved, Subaru knew the real threat would come, yet his fatigue was rising again, reaching 97. He could stall only for so long. One adventurer struck from behind, slicing through his back and raising his fatigue to 98. Another pierced him from the front. More rushed in, stabbing repeatedly until Subaru dropped his spear. One of them laughed hysterically, claiming he had killed Subaru. But Subaru raised his head, asking if the man truly believed it was over. Electricity exploded outward, frying them instantly. Subaru staggered, removing the sword lodged in his chest before falling to his knees. Adventurers hesitated, wondering if he was finally down. Itsuki commented that it was hard to believe Subaru's era was ending so easily. The status window warned again, fatigue 99, death imminent. Subaru growled that Itsuki, of all people, should know better. Even at the end, Subaru was the one who won. He rose and hurled his spear with everything he had. Itsuki glanced at Archangel's blessing and muttered that he should never have given it back, then looked up to see nothing but lightning and a spear flying into his face. He whispered that it was impossible. As Subaru collapsed, he muttered that the final blow was pathetic. He wished he could have struck Itsuki directly, though he was certain the spear had hit him. What damage it did, he would never know. It was ironic how many thoughts came at death's door. If this suffering lasted forever, it would be torture. A strange scent reached him. His body jolted. A lid clattered away. He sat upright inside a garbage can. He looked around, bewildered, wondering if he had returned to Earth. He summoned his status window and froze. The name displayed was Subaru Hase, and his stats were pitifully low. A headache struck as memories not his own flooded in, people comparing this body's Subaru to Narukami Subaru of 20 years ago. Had 20 years truly passed since his death? He toppled out of the trash can, spotting a player kit nearby. If he used it, he could gather information. Searching for the Blue Earth Guild, he found only people praising Blue Zone and Itsuki, calling Blue Earth's successors weak. Itsuki himself declared they carried Subaru's will and that he would never forget Subaru's heroic final moments. Subaru stared in disbelief. Itsuki was still alive, wearing a mask, smiling. He remembered they had once been friends, close even, until Itsuki announced he would leave the guild, asking Subaru to tell the others. He promised Subaru would understand one day and that he would remain a shadow even if they separated. Years later, he returned with a new guild, Blue Zone, named after that very shadow, and despite 20 years passing, they were still only on the 9th floor. When Subaru discovered he had a memorial hall, he went at once. The building was far more extravagant than he ever imagined. Inside, his broken mask had become sacred merchandise, his battles displayed like legend. He asked who would gain anything from immortalizing him and for what purpose. Then he heard Itsuki's voice praising him as a hero who guided them. A hologram of Itsuki appeared, declaring Blue Zone the only guild carrying Subaru's noble legacy now that Subaru and Blue Earth no longer existed. Subaru felt fury rising. Killing him hadn't been enough. Itsuki had rewritten the world's memory. But Subaru vowed to reclaim it all, proving the traitor for what he truly was. He would not waste this second chance. As he walked, someone collided with him, a child wearing a mask identical to Subaru's own. The child's parents ran over and Subaru said it was just a small bump, but then realized they wore his mask too. Looking around, he saw an entire crowd wearing his likeness. He wondered what madness this was. He recalled Itsuki's promise that he would remain a hero even after death. Was this what he meant? Continuing through the hall, Subaru found people praying at a funeral altar dedicated solely to him. He wondered if this entire charade was fabricated to steal Blue Earth's glory. Then, amid the flowers adorning the grave, he spotted one faintly glowing. Hope surged unexpectedly. Pushing through the crowd, he knelt and retrieved it, whispering if it belonged to Shig Ejiri. Outside the memorial hall, someone watched the building from above. He remarked that they had managed to complete another year without incident. A woman beside him scolded him for sounding so carefree. If they had been even slightly late, they would have run straight into Blue Zone. She wondered aloud whether simply offering flowers every year was truly enough for a memorial service. The older man replied that no one ever knew what might happen, so they had to be careful. Dispelling his disguise, he added that Narukami Subaru might notice the flowers he had placed. She asked whether he really believed Subaru was still alive. The man admitted he had never confirmed Subaru's death with his own eyes. The woman sighed, saying that it would likely be easier for Itsuki to discover their location than for them to locate Subaru. And if Subaru were alive, he would never have stood by silently watching this nonsense for 20 years. The man simply smirked in response. Later that day, Subaru stood in a quiet street, sweating nervously as he clutched the glowing flower, whispering Shig Ejiri's name. He headed toward a house he recognized from the memories now belonging to this new body. This man, Subaru Haas, had apparently been a shut-in. Subaru searched once again for his guild, finding nothing. Still, he was certain Shig was alive. He wasn't sure if the person he sensed earlier had truly been Shig Ejiri or not, but he knew one thing: they had survived. They had hidden themselves for 20 years. Subaru reflected grimly that if Shig knew the truth back then, he never would have let their teammates die. Yet perhaps Shig had survived alone. Subaru couldn't be sure whether all 4 of his guildmates had escaped when he launched them away from the battlefield. But as long as Itsuki lived, making contact now would be suicide. Subaru was powerless in this weak body. Forcing his way into any search would paint a target on his back. So before anything else, he needed to regain his strength. Digging deeper into this body's memories, he remembered. In 2 days, the tutorial to become a player would begin. If he could survive that, it would be enough. As long as he was alive, he could find them again. 2 days passed. Subaru went to the tutorial exam hall. One participant had just completed his trial, 2 goblin corpses lying at his feet. The exam proctor Huger looked disappointed, noting the man barely managed the kills. The man asked if he still passed, and Huger admitted he did, though he could attempt the next step for greater rewards. But the participant refused immediately. Hyuga, irritated by his shouting, waved him off, calling it pathetic that such a weakling had passed at all. Hyuga muttered that among today's candidates, the only one who caught his eye was Isaac, Reinhardt's son. Isaac had cleared up to stage 20, the rest were hopeless. Standards had fallen so low that the quality of recruits had plummeted. He looked down at his roster for the next contestant and saw the name Subaru. He said it was a heavy name to bear, but only if the boy passed. He asked Subaru if he was ready and summoned 2 goblins. Before Hyuga could finish explaining the objective, Subaru blurred past the creatures. Their heads hit the floor before Hyuga even realized what happened. Subaru calmly stated that he had spent the last 2 days testing the limits of this new body, and it had turned out to be quite exceptional. The status window asked whether he wanted to proceed. Subaru accepted immediately. More heads rolled. Subaru cut through goblins in a relentless stream. Hyuga watched in disbelief. Subaru wasn't simply swinging wildly, he read each enemy 3 moves ahead, dispatching them with calculated precision. The level of swordsmanship was beyond natural talent. Hyuga compared his movements to another man's, someone legendary from 20 years ago. They were almost identical to Narukami Subaru's. Subaru drove his sword through another goblin and cleared stage 49. The system asked if he wished to challenge the final boss. He answered yes without hesitation. The entire room rumbled. Cracks ruptured the ground. A giant arm burst upward. Hyuga shouted for him to stop. He warned that Subaru was not that Subaru and that stepping forward meant death. The final enemy was the Goblin King. The deeper the challenger had progressed, the angrier it grew. Hyuga urged him to give up, saying he was being reckless. With Subaru's current stats, he couldn't possibly deal meaningful damage, but Subaru remained unmoved. He already knew that much. Even so, he refused to stop here. He dropped his sword. Hyuga panicked, convinced the kid had lost his mind. The Goblin King lunged forward, but suddenly jolted, crying out as a needle stabbed into its thigh. It stared down at the tiny weapon, bewildered, then looked up at Subaru, who was retrieving needles from a fallen goblin's club. Subaru asked the monster whether it wanted to bet which would happen first. Subaru falling or Subaru turning it into a porcupine. He flicked 3 needles, 2 burying themselves into the creature's eyes, sending it staggering back. Subaru closed in. The king reached for its axe and swung, but Subaru sidestepped with crisp precision. As he moved, memories resurfaced. A woman from his past party, Rwvwnge, teaching him how to throw daggers. She scolded him then, saying that anything could be thrown if one understood the center of gravity and wrist movement. She demonstrated by flicking a pin that shattered the bowls. In the present, the Goblin King choked on blood, a needle lodged in its throat and countless more piercing its body. Subaru remarked that destructive power came from rotational force, while accuracy inversely depended on hesitation. Less hesitation meant better aim. All lessons from Rwvwnge. Hyuga watched, stunned. Using poison needles from goblin corpses was absurd. The bodies didn't vanish until the trial ended, but even so, this required not just sword skill but advanced projectile mastery. Genius didn't even begin to describe this level of technique. The Goblin King finally toppled. Subaru retrieved his sword, telling it he held no grudge, and delivered the finishing blow. The system confirmed the kill and announced that he had cleared stage 50, the first person ever in the tutorial to do so. Subaru exhaled, remarking that this was still only the tutorial. He hoped he wouldn't face another monster like that in the practice stage. Status windows flooded his vision, credits earned, points granted, and access to the tutorial shop unlocked. With 24,000 points, he opened the shop, scanning items ranging from 5 to 2,000 points. A rare rank weapon caught his eye, the nameless demon sword crafted by a kindred. Tempting, but Subaru needed something else. Lightning consumed health, which counted as fatigue. To use his power safely, he needed a holy sword, something to reduce fatigue buildup. He found exactly that, the holy sword Miranda. It reduced fatigue accumulation and extended combat duration. But he hesitated. The demon's sword offered raw destructive power, though neither option was guaranteed. He weighed his choices carefully. Scrolling further, he noticed a skill, Wedge of Greed, rank F, but its effect suppressed side effects from items and skills. It required 10,000 credits to fully unlock bonuses, but the skill itself cost only 1,400 points. Subaru had never seen anything like it. If paired with the demon's sword, it might even suppress lightning's drawbacks. Deciding to risk it, he purchased both the sword and the skill. Testing them together confirmed his hunch, they synergized well. Rather than limit himself with one technique, using the demon sword from the start might be the better path. Rwvwnge recognized the blade immediately, saying it was a fine choice, high compatibility with the chosen skill. Yet, as a supervisor, he admitted he didn't fully understand the reasoning. He introduced himself and asked Subaru why he chose those items. He couldn't say it was efficient, nor could he call it useless. Subaru asked if he really expected him to explain every detail. Rwvwnge bristled at the tone. Subaru corrected himself with formal speech, asking if this was what he wanted. Rwvwnge muttered that he must be tired after the exam and would let it slide this time. Subaru studied him and remembered the face of a younger Rwvwnge from 20 years ago. Time had not been kind. Rwvwnge looked as though he had aged 50 years, not 20. Rwvwnge once begged Subaru for an autograph. Subaru told Rwvwnge he didn't have an autograph, but Rwvwnge insisted that writing his name would be enough. Subaru remarked that times had really changed, though mostly it seemed Rwvwnge had simply lost all of his hair. Still, Subaru had no intention of answering his questions. Instead, he asked Rwvwnge to keep the exam's details confidential. Rwvwnge sighed and accepted, saying that if Subaru insisted on behaving like this, he would personally drill proper manners into him. He even asked whether Subaru wished to join the Chivalry Guild. Subaru declined. Rwvwnge explained that being scouted by a supervisor was rare, then asked whether Subaru planned to advance to the second floor. Subaru didn't wait, he moved floors immediately. Rwvwnge tried to stop him, disappointed, but Subaru vanished into the transfer. He arrived in the land of beginnings on the second floor, a place swarming with adventurers. Seeing the scenery again filled him with a strange emotion. He thought of this as a chance no one should ever receive, a second attempt. Having experienced this once before, he needed to do better. For the comrades who might still be alive and for those who had already fallen, he made his way to a private training room to test his newly learned skills. The receptionist asked which floor he had come from, and Subaru answered that he had just arrived. The man assumed he was a typical newcomer and suggested training room 1, which contained only a straw dummy. Subaru chose room 5 instead. The receptionist stared at him, insisting the room would be a waste of money. Subaru thanked him for the concern but requested 30 minutes. The man reminded him there were no refunds if he left halfway and muttered that Subaru was acting like the protagonist of some melodrama. Subaru paid. The higher the room number, the harder the training difficulty. For a newcomer with no gear, suspicious glances were normal. Inside room 5, Subaru drew the cursed blade. The weapon recognized its new master and boosted his abilities, consuming his health and mana. Wedge of Greed activated to resist the backlash, but it failed to stop all the drain. His fatigue rose. Subaru murmured that the resistance was still too weak, though expected. He needed to push harder. The sword devoured more health. Blood hit the floor as his abilities rose proportionally to what it consumed. He wondered if this was his limit, but concluded it was within expectations. Spending 10,000 credits, he upgraded Wedge of Greed. His trembling hand gradually steadied as the skill reached rank E, offering partial resistance to the sword's excessive drain. He swung again. The sword ate more of his health, but his power surged further. With this, he considered the setup successful and dashed headlong into the traps of the room. Later, the receptionist jolted awake as someone staggered past him. Subaru, drenched in blood, exited the facility. The receptionist insisted not even 10 minutes had passed. There was no way this was the same man who had entered room 5. Opening the door, he found the room completely destroyed. The next morning, Subaru woke in bed, his body stiff. He wondered how long he had slept. Without Wedge of Greed, a cursed sword like this would have wrecked him permanently. The physical burden had increased, but he had drawn out its power successfully. With his current stats, he shouldn't have even been able to lift the weapon. The sword and Wedge of Greed were perfectly compatible, meaning lightning should also work well. Unfortunately, upgrading the skill cost far too much. He was broke. He muttered how far he had fallen, struggling with credit management. Outside, a man screamed loudly into a camera, filming himself for a live stream. The display brought Subaru back to memories of his own early days climbing the tower. The streamer shouted about trendy youngster gear, and when someone donated 1,000 credits, he poured coffee on his own head. Everyone watching recoiled. Subaru wondered whether the man was mentally sound. While researching earning methods, Subaru discovered this era was dominated by PvP streamers. That explained the strange spectacle earlier until someone recognized him. The stranger called his name, marveling that Subaru had come up as well. He asked if Subaru lived nearby. Subaru's body reacted instinctively to his presence, fear etched into old memories. It was Isaac. From the original body's memories, Subaru recalled everything. Isaac dragging him, insulting him, telling him his very name was irritating, accusing him of never following instructions. He had taken Subaru's belongings, declared him garbage, and thrown him into a trash can, saying that area would be his new home. If Subaru ever stepped out, Isaac would deal with him personally. Now Isaac bragged about clearing stage 20, breaking his father's record, gaining praise, earning a B-rank skill, the highest one could get in the tutorial. He ordered Subaru to buy him coffee on his way back. Subaru responded that he had no credits, Isaac could buy his own. Isaac slapped a hand over his face, saying Subaru was as disobedient as ever and even wondered aloud whether Subaru's soul had been swapped. Subaru walked away. He didn't have time to deal with the original body's grudges, but if Isaac interfered, that would be a different matter. Isaac grabbed Subaru's arm. Subaru warned him to let go. The patrons around them stared. Isaac, unwilling to cause a scene, forced himself to back off with a fake laugh, claiming he was only giving Subaru a scare like old times. Subaru, he claimed, was still the same small fry. If he wanted to, he could make Subaru disappear. After all, he had his father's backing. After Isaac walked off, Subaru muttered that calling him a friend was ridiculous. He refocused. Players grew in two ways. Through trials where death only cost credits. Through hunting where death was real but growth was far faster. He headed to the Whispering Orc Nest. Most avoided hunting due to the risk, but Subaru needed the speed of real combat. Browsing streams while walking, he found yet another fake Subaru Narukami with 80,000 viewers preparing for a third-floor challenge. Subaru wondered how many people had built entire careers using his name. A donor offered the streamer 20,000 credits for a mission. Subaru was speechless. Watching the man earn money effortlessly while he risked his life killing monsters gave Subaru a moment of reflection before he rose, drew his blade from the orc he had slain, and decided to continue. More orcs emerged. Subaru spotted the orc general. This time, even without poison needles, he possessed something better. The sword consumed his health, increasing his stats, and Wedge of Greed resisted the recoil. He didn't waste time on trash mobs. He dashed through them, leapt high, and cleaved the general's head off in a single strike. After clearing the nest, he even bought a replica of the mask he used to wear. Now he understood exactly how streamers earned money. If he was going to stream, he would stick to what he did best. The concept might be common, but he was the genuine article. His stream debuted under South Entertainment's radar. Inside their office, a woman, Hatsuka, screamed at a stream she was watching, startling her coworker. She said not even 5 people could clear what she had just seen. The coworker asked if it was another fake Subaru. She said she was tired of everyone cosplaying him. Streaming felt like it was dying. He told her to stop being dramatic. Their income depended on streamers. She shot back that most people didn't understand the true difficulty of climbing the tower. Her coworker asked why she had given up climbing it herself. She replied it was boring and he had quit too. He pointed out that she only climbed the tower to meet Subaru Narukami, and once she lost that goal, it wasn't surprising she lost motivation. Hatsuka suddenly exclaimed that she had found an amazing kid. It turned out to be another Subaru cosplayer with only one viewer. She admitted that whenever she saw someone wearing the mask, she couldn't help getting her hopes up. Her coworker scolded her. She demanded he give her credits and he begged forgiveness without understanding how things escalated. Meanwhile, Subaru entered the second floor's first trial, the Dungeon of Beginnings. Achievement points would be awarded for each monster defeated. He found it simple, but being watched by viewers applied unexpected pressure. A user named Love Money asked his floor and whether it was his first time there. Subaru confirmed. Love Money asked if streaming was wise since he probably didn't know the dungeon well. As she spoke, a creature dove from the ceiling. Subaru grabbed it midair and slammed it into the ground, earning 1 point. He asked whether streaming as a newcomer was a problem. His viewer count rose to 3. White commented that Subaru's reflexes were insane, asking since when second-floor players streamed like this. Love Money replied that they did sometimes, but usually quit because viewership didn't grow. It was safer to travel with a party. Subaru thanked her but said he preferred going alone. Both she and White declared him doomed. Chat mocked him. Subaru noted that simply using the name Subaru Narukami attracted viewers. A mud merman lunged for his ankles. Subaru sliced it away like a golf swing, earning 2 points. Bats descended and he cleaved half in one motion, pushing through with minimal effort. Love Money was stunned. White was speechless. His viewer count rose to 10. Subaru said that by listening carefully, one could determine where enemies were coming from and how many. He defeated a large wave with ease, though he quietly admitted internally that it was still not enough. He wanted as many achievement points as possible. When he stopped and looked up, a massive cluster of bats stared down at him. Chat declared him dead. A user named My Lonely Stream offered a mission: defeat them all for 100 credits. Chat mocked the offer. Subaru thanked the donor anyway. At South Entertainment, a furious streamer pounded his desk after failing a run. His coworker apologized, but Hatsuko wasn't listening. She was fixated on Subaru's stream. She repeated that something was wrong. Her coworker assumed she had lost money, but she clarified it was this Subaru. When he looked, he immediately understood. The entire chat was losing its mind, demanding to know how many enemies Subaru was killing alone. Hatsuka answered, all of them. Subaru raised his blade. A memory of Sugar formerly appearing to him as Sephiroth surfaced. Sugar had once praised Subaru's precision, saying that although it looked like a single cut, he was actually reading movements and predicting them. When asked how he did it, Subaru said it wasn't anything special. Sugar called him annoying for that answer. Back then, he had explained that facing a group of one-eyed bats didn't require aiming for each eye individually. They attacked by thrusting their heads forward, and the more of them there were, the larger the shared opening became. Subaru demonstrated the principle again, cleaving through the last 3. Chat demanded that anyone who had called him a noob step forward. Subaru commented that communicating with Chat was difficult. Love Money reminded him to accept the mission reward. Subaru stared blankly at his interface, asking how to accept it. Love Money laughed, explaining he needed to tap the mission acceptance button. Subaru thanked her. His viewer count reached 20 as he reached the dungeon's final area. Meanwhile, Hatsuka erupted into fangirl screams. Her coworker, Senhai, covered his ears, saying she was the one hurting people. She insisted this was fate and even speculated about reincarnation. Senhai said she lost all reasoning when Subaru was involved, ironic since she was actually right. She began to feel lightheaded. Senhai tried to stop her from closing her eyes, knowing she wanted to scout Subaru. She called Subaru perfect. He reminded her that the streamer was brand new. She insisted on giving him a chance and looked back at her phone. Subaru stood before a massive door. This was the dungeon's end. Inside rested the boss, Wolf Warrior Greg. The chat felt the pressure. Greg was not a monster designed for hunting. He was a gatekeeper who evaluated whether challengers could advance. Someone offered 3,000 credits if Subaru defeated him. Chat teased him for falling for bait. Greg stirred. He rose and greeted Subaru, asking where everyone else was. Subaru answered that he was alone. Greg called him a man with the soul of a great warrior. Elsewhere, Hatsuka and Senhai met with their department head, John Tail. He asked how many viewers this streamer had. Senhai said around 20. Hatsuka corrected him, it was over 30 now. Tail scolded them, saying they were gambling during work hours and now wanted him to sponsor someone with 20 viewers. Hatsuka corrected him again, it was 30, but Tail was unmoved. He said Hatsuka should stream herself with her skills and appearance. She ignored him, screaming that the streamer had reached 40 viewers. Tail realized she wasn't listening. Back in the dungeon, Subaru steadied himself as Greg prepared to attack. Subaru absorbed his own health to raise his stats and calmed his breathing. Even if it was his first encounter with Greg, he had to fight as he always had. Greg charged, Subaru blocked. Greg followed with relentless strikes, pushing Subaru backward. Subaru acknowledged Greg's strength. Matching him with brute force alone was impossible, but Subaru had another approach. Greg praised him as a warrior. Subaru sidestepped the next attack, knowing Greg expected it. Subaru immediately tightened his grip and met Greg's counterattack head-on, sparks exploding between them. Chat roasted the viewer who created Subaru's mission, calling him crazy for forcing Subaru to fight such an opponent. Subaru said that sometimes methods other than strength mattered more. Greg declared the entertainment over and attacked again, smashing the wall, debris exploding everywhere. Subaru slipped aside, telling Greg that this line belonged to him. Greg's attacks were too one-dimensional and therefore easy to dodge. Subaru slashed across Greg's chest. Greg staggered. Subaru stayed close, cutting again across his side. He then sheathed his blade as Greg fell behind him, calling Subaru a magnificent warrior with his final breath. Status windows flooded in, level-ups, stat bonuses, achievement points. Chat was speechless. This had never happened before. Subaru collected his mission reward, saying he would put the credits to good use. As the door opened for him to move on, he stepped forward and was instantly overwhelmed by a cascade of trial notifications. The chat exploded as trial notifications flooded Subaru's screen. People cried out that there were only 16 known trials in existence and Subaru had somehow been offered far more choices. It had to be a world record. Viewers insisted that the number of available trials scaled with the challenger's talent and demanded to know whether he would choose the lightning trial. If he insisted on using the name Subaru Narukami, they argued, then he'd better follow through. Subaru answered without hesitation and selected the lightning trial. His body vanished into the teleportation light. At Southern Entertainment, every employee crowded into Director JS' office where Subaru's fight against the Wolf Warrior was still replaying. Hatsuka practically vibrated with triumph. There were already 60 viewers, an unheard-of rate of growth. She reminded the room that streamers usually received only a handful of missions, maybe 1 to 3, but Subaru had already received more than 13. John Tail admitted it was impressive that Subaru had defeated the Wolf Warrior, something never accomplished before. Even so, he argued, Subaru was still a rookie streamer on the second floor. Investing in him would be a massive risk. Hatsuka countered by proposing a bet. If Subaru failed to acquire Lightning, both she and Senhai would work on fixed salaries for 5 years. But if Subaru succeeded, John would have to sign him without excuses. Senhai screamed as she was flung aside, asking why she dragged him into this. John asked whether Hatsuka seriously believed Subaru had a chance. After all, the only player who had ever acquired Lightning was the legendary Subaru Narukami. Hatsuka insisted they would not know until he tried. John laughed and accepted the bet gladly. Senhai begged him not to. Inside the lightning trial, Subaru landed, and instantly someone tackled him from the side. A massive shadow smashed into the ground where he had just stood. The stranger shouted at him, demanding why he wasn't paying attention. Subaru stared at the figure looming before them, a giant. The stranger wondered if Subaru wanted to die. The status window instructed him to defeat the giant fragment, while Subaru silently questioned why such a monster appeared here. Viewers asked if something had glitched. This creature belonged in the giant race episode, not the lightning trial. Subaru reasoned that perhaps defeating Greg had altered the sequence. The giant struck again. Subaru dodged with minimal movement, noting that although it was enormous, it was slower than Greg. He already knew the creature's patterns, which made things easier. The man who saved him urged him to run. Subaru decided to finish the fight quickly before being interrupted again. Letting the sword devour his health, he boosted his stats. The giant brought down its club. Subaru sidestepped, stepped onto the falling weapon, and launched himself high above the battlefield. He soared past the creature's shoulders and appeared behind its neck, driving his sword through its throat from behind. As the giant screamed, Subaru mocked its noise and twisted the blade until it collapsed. Stage 4, cleared. Chat erupted in confusion when the interface displayed Stage 4. Subaru received large stat increases, 4,000 points and 2 items. Heart of the Giant and Thunderclap. The man who saved him approached, bewildered, demanding to know what he was. Subaru said it should be obvious he had come to defeat the giant. They headed to a nearby village. Inside one of the buildings, Subaru responded to the chat's request to show the items. He pulled out Heart of the Giant, a rare accessory that boosted health and regeneration and granted a flat HP increase. He liked the item especially because accessories were valuable. The armor he gained was also rare rank, granting Thunderclap once per day, nullifying status ailments with 3 uses left. Chat informed him that Heart of the Giant could be sold for any price. Someone named Nara Kamikyo Koa posted a 5,000 credit mission if Subaru acquired Lightning. Subaru thanked him and many more viewers began sending credits for the same mission. Subaru couldn't believe so many people were waiting specifically for Lightning. Maybe he had been a more significant figure than he thought. A knock came. Subaru told them to enter. The man from before arrived with the village knight captain, Lord Pellis. They spoke briefly and then stepped outside. The scarred man explained that recent giant attacks forced them to remain armed around the clock. For safety, villagers were not allowed outside except for essentials. Pellis said he had heard Subaru protected the village in his absence and thanked him on everyone's behalf. Subaru responded humbly but also recognized Pellis. He remembered him as a brave knight who would stand against the giants. Pellis stated that during reconnaissance they had located the chieftain of the giant race and were preparing to risk their lives. He pleaded with Subaru to save their village. Chat panicked. They didn't want Pellis to die again. Subaru remembered that according to his past life, Pellis indeed died in the next stage. He told the knights to raise their heads. He would help them. Pellis thanked him. Stage 5, Survival. As the group assembled, Subaru monitored the rapidly growing chat scroll on his tablet. Pellis halted the march and pointed forward. There stood their target, the giant chieftain. Pellis planned to draw its attention so Subaru could strike from behind. Subaru grabbed Pellis's shoulder, warning him to wait. Something was wrong. The chieftain wasn't asleep. Its eyelids twitched. It stared directly at them as more giants burst from the mountain pass. Pellis panicked. Soldiers were seized and torn apart. The giants overwhelmed them with raw strength. Some knights fled without waiting for orders. The chieftain's laughter echoed down the mountain. One adventurer's brother tried to charge at the giants, but the others held him back. Pellis gave a final order for the remaining soldiers to retreat, think of their families, and rebuild. As they ran, he entrusted leadership to Falcon. Subaru stepped forward, stopping Pellis in surprise. Subaru told him to retreat quickly as well. Pellis needed to survive to rebuild the knights. Subaru said he couldn't fight freely with Pellis beside him. If Pellis refused, they would die together. Pellis said he could not abandon an outsider. Subaru repeated himself. Pellis relented, promising to gather soldiers and return. Subaru thanked him, then he charged alone at a horde of giants. He sliced through a thigh, then a shin, dropping 2 giants instantly before finishing them off and earning 20 points. The remaining giants hesitated. Subaru admitted he was used to being alone, test or not. Pellis, running down the mountain, looked back, gritting his teeth at the sounds of battle. More giants surrounded Subaru. Chat declared it a suicide mission. Subaru said that Pellis's fate could still be changed. If he acted fast enough, perhaps he could save them all. He dodged an attack and severed a giant's leg and chest in one sweeping movement. He continued carving through them, parting flesh and bone, working his way toward the chieftain. He needed altitude to locate it. Using a bisected corpse as a stepping platform, he shot into the air again. He leapt from giant to giant, closing in. Chat panicked. One misstep would kill him. Wedge of Greed resisted the sword's drain, giving him precious stamina and clarity. Finally, Subaru spotted the chieftain, grinning mockingly from the rear. The chieftain raised its weapon. Subaru said he had to finish this in one blow or die. Both combatants committed everything to their attack. Subaru extended his hand and snapped his fingers. Thunderclap detonated. A deafening shockwave rippled across the battlefield. Giants collapsed to their knees, screaming, clutching their heads. Even the chieftain dropped its weapon. Subaru lunged, driving his sword through the back of its skull and twisting until blood sprayed from its mouth. The chieftain toppled with Subaru still atop its head. Stage cleared. His levels and stats surged. Chat shouted that nothing like this had ever happened before. Subaru commented that if this were a web novel, this scene would make a cool ending, but the monsters weren't gone. They persisted until the test fully ended. Unfortunately, he had exhausted his strength. Lightning churned in the clouds. A bolt struck Subaru, engulfing him. Far away, deep in a forest far removed from civilization, a woman who resembled Rwvwnge sat doom-scrolling. Sugar exited a building and asked what she was doing. She said the weather was nice, something they would not enjoy much longer. Sugar said the time was almost here. She replied that at most, they had 1 year left. He said that would be when they could finally end everything. She ignored him while watching a video. He asked what fascinated her. She said a streamer called Subaru Narukami had started broadcasting. Sugar panicked. She explained he was just a fraud using the name. He was taking on the second-floor trial. If Subaru had survived, she said, Itsuki would have been erased long ago. Sugar demanded she stop. She asked how long he would hide in Subaru's shadow. He threw it back at her. Why was she glued to everything related to him? She insisted she was just passing time. Sugar held up her phone, showing a silly video, and she became instantly entranced. He wondered what she was reacting to until he looked. He froze in shock. Back in the trial, lightning surged outward from Subaru, paralyzing all surrounding giants. A status window appeared. Subaru had acquired lightning and earned 2,000 achievement points. The system asked whether he wanted to continue the trial or advance to the next floor. Chat went feral. This wasn't how lightning was supposed to be earned, but he was alive, which was enough. It was a plus rank skill, consuming stamina and mana to wield lightning, and could be upgraded by adding lightning fragments. He collected all pending mission credits. His total reached 20,000. Earlier he had promised a thank you performance, so he resumed the trial. Giants unfroze and charged him. He told viewers he would show them the moment they had been waiting for. Using his credits, he upgraded Wedge of Greed again. The skill resisted the backlash of lightning. He could only channel lightning into his arm for now, but it would suffice. Every giant was about to be cooked. He channeled lightning into his blade. For just one moment, he allowed himself to unleash power as he had in the old days. He swung. A single catastrophic arc tore through every giant in sight, filling the mountain with scattered flesh and severed limbs. The battlefield became a sea of corpse fragments. Subaru staggered. He had meant to save enough strength to walk back, but he had misjudged the output. Pellis and the remaining soldiers returned in shock just as Subaru collapsed to one knee. He looked up, vision blurring, saying he couldn't believe Pellis had actually come back. At Southern Entertainment, Hatsuka, Senhai, and John watched her meltdown. Senhai asked whether things had truly needed to go that far. John admitted he didn't understand her heart either. Hatsuka sat frozen, flushed, panicking. She worried her message sounded too stiff, too businesslike. Maybe she should have added emojis. She had sent Subaru a message. Now she was collapsing in embarrassment. Senhai commented her message looked purely professional, questioning whether she had become a hardcore fan already. John reminded her she claimed she wanted to be a manager. She replied that she was a fan first, she couldn't help it. And she had already told them, lightning, a skill only Subaru Narukami had ever acquired, now belonged to this new streamer. They needed him. Senhai sighed, relieved she'd saved their salaries. John agreed, since nobody else could acquire lightning, this newcomer was worth watching. Then Senhai's phone buzzed. Subaru had read Hatsuka's message but left her on read. Her joy instantly deflated into despair. Elsewhere, a man surrounded by collectible figurines prepared a new broadcast. He was Hawkeye, a streamer known for analyzing player battles with ruthless accuracy. His insight and combat IQ earned him a solid reputation. He pulled up footage of Ammon, the new rising star of Itsuki's guild. Some called him the second Narukami. Hawkeye analyzed Itsuki as well, acknowledging the immense pressure on him as a representative of Earth. And no retrospective would be complete without the cross-generational legend Subaru Narukami. He began his stream with flair, announcing that tonight he would break down the current hottest player, Subaru Narukami, the new streamer. Straight away, he declared Subaru's performance insane. Chat asked what they were even watching. Hawkeye said no normal human could control a newly acquired skill with such precision. Subaru had loaded just enough lightning into his sword, wasting none. That required impossible talent, control, technique, focus, and flawless judgment. He hadn't made a single mistake. He claimed that strictly in terms of control, this streamer might even be close to Subaru Narukami in his prime. Back in the trial, Subaru awoke. The status window displayed Stage 6 on standby. His fatigue was now 0. He explained to viewers that 2 conditions were required to suspend a trial: clearing the previous stage and having the next one not yet begin. And having 0 fatigue. He was mentally exhausted, though, so he decided to pause. He thanked viewers for watching and wondered when the viewer count had gotten so high. He apologized, saying the next stream would be the day after tomorrow, and ended the broadcast. Exploring the stage, he spotted a distant gate. Then he received a message from Hatsuka. He assumed it was spam mail but grew curious. Back at the inn, he researched Southern Entertainment. The world truly had changed. Streaming companies now dominated the industry. Southern Entertainment was a top-tier one, and Hawkeye was part of it. Subaru recalled chat mentioning that Hawkeye had praised him. Elsewhere, Isaac returned to the inn still fuming. Hawkeye's comment comparing the new streamer to Subaru Narukami enraged him. As he walked in, irritation bubbling, he spotted Subaru alone at a table and declared the day truly cursed. He deliberately bumped Subaru's coffee over. Subaru hissed at the heat and realized who it was. Isaac chuckled that they sure met often. Subaru continued browsing his phone. Isaac mocked him, saying he'd compensate for the coffee since Subaru was broke and pathetic. Subaru ignored him, angering Isaac. He grabbed Subaru by the collar, threatening to beat him. Subaru seized Isaac's wrist and firmly pushed it away, leaving red marks behind. Isaac stared, confused at his strength. Subaru said they could consider the coffee paid for and thanked him for the treat before leaving. Isaac shouted after him, furious. He stormed outside, ranting about being tired of hearing the name Subaru everywhere. Subaru returned to his phone and decided to reply to Hatsuka's email. A cutaway showed Hatsuka in the bath as Subaru answered her message, though the meeting wasn't shown. Instead, the scene jumped to another dungeon. Subaru fought through the exiled lizardman's hideout until he reached the final boss, a salamander. He said he was getting used to this body but not yet fully synchronizing with its abilities. To avoid another accident like before, he needed to master lightning and test maximum output. He gathered lightning into his legs and leapt toward the salamander. It fired a massive fireball. Subaru charged his sword with lightning and cleaved the fireball in two. Wedge of Greed failed to resist the backlash. Fatigue rose. Still, he moved exactly as he once had in his previous life. With practiced precision, he cut the salamander cleanly in half. Subaru finished clearing the dungeon, leveling up and gaining additional stats. Later, stepping out into the forest, he commented that the stamina reduction effect worked better than expected. His fatigue was only at 61, still plenty of margin. That meant he could safely push his lightning output further. The problem was the Wedge of Greed. Each upgrade cost twice as many credits as before, which was painfully harsh. He muttered that he wished someone would appear with a convenient job offer out of nowhere and grant him fast credits. Someone did appear, but not the kind he wanted. Isaac emerged from the trees, asking if Subaru was hunting out here. Subaru looked up, spotting his silhouette. Isaac approached with a smirk, saying it was laughable to see him doing this. In all the years they'd known each other, Subaru had never once gone hunting. Subaru sighed, calling him persistent. Isaac replied he had thought long and hard about things, but his patience had finally snapped. He wanted to end everything right here. Subaru could tell he was serious. Elsewhere, Hawkeye stepped into a room where John Tail greeted him warmly. Hawkeye said it had been a while. John asked about his stream and Hawkeye explained it was steady. His viewer count didn't fluctuate much. John noted that consistency was a good sign. Hawkeye then asked why John had summoned him, assuming it wasn't just for tea. John confirmed he was right. It was about the newcomer Hawkeye had reviewed yesterday. John asked if he'd been serious about his assessment. Hawkeye said that if John meant the rookie Subaru, then yes, his raw talent was comparable to Subaru Narukami in his prime, even if reaching that same level was another matter. John pressed further, wanting to know if that was Hawkeye's final assessment. Hawkeye asked why he cared. John said he intended to scout the streamer. Hawkeye pointed out that Subaru had far too few viewers for Southern Entertainment to consider him. John agreed, but Hawkeye's evaluation had given him enough confidence. They could boost Subaru's numbers with a collaboration. Raising recognition was the agency's job. Back in the forest, Isaac stated there were only the two of them right now. Subaru confirmed dryly. Isaac insisted this happened because Subaru had gotten cocky and entered a dungeon alone. Did he really think with luck alone he could become worthy of the name Subaru? Subaru remarked he hadn't expected so many people cosplaying him. Then he asked Isaac a question of his own. Why did he always treat him like an enemy? Isaac answered bluntly because his name was Subaru. Subaru asked if that was really the only reason. Isaac scoffed. Surely Subaru knew who his father was. Subaru asked what that had to do with anything. Isaac brought up his father constantly. Isaac explained that his father, Reinhardt, was a high ranker on the 9th floor. Subaru recognized the name at once, the one-strike swordsman. Isaac exploded, screaming at him not to speak his father's name so casually. Subaru pieced together the truth. In another dimension, Subaru Narukami had completely overwhelmed Reinhardt, ending their duel in under 30 seconds with a single strike. Isaac shouted that the reason he saw Subaru as an enemy was because of that humiliation. Did Subaru even understand how much Subaru Hase, the body's original owner, had suffered as a result? Isaac warned him to stop talking or he'd kill him. Then Isaac's aura ignited, his arm enveloped in flame. He took back his earlier hesitation. He'd finish this right here. He declared how much he despised Subaru Narukami. It sickened him that, despite being nothing special, Subaru received all the attention and praise. He blamed Subaru's arrogance for dragging his whole guild down. He said that somewhere in hell, Subaru was rotting with the rest of those who followed him. Fire exploded from Isaac's attack as he lunged, saying receiving the name Subaru was just bad luck for him. The ground erupted. Isaac sighed, annoyed at himself. He had messed up the force control. Even if Subaru had been sort of a friend, he'd done something terrible. Next time, he said, he'd go finish off that mask streamer bastard. Subaru's voice answered from within the smoke, asking if Isaac was looking for the mask streamer. Isaac was stunned he was still alive. Subaru put on his mask and said he was right here. Isaac denied the possibility Subaru had taken his fire attack head-on. Subaru admitted it didn't feel great and then dashed forward, punching Isaac hard in the gut. Isaac fell to his knees, vomiting blood. Subaru said he shouldn't have spoken ill of his friends. Isaac, shocked and trembling, insisted this couldn't be happening. Subaru told him plainly he was the real Subaru Narukami of Blue Earth. Isaac screamed for him to stop talking nonsense, demanding to know if he meant he was the streamer going around under that name. Isaac argued that Subaru's lightning wasn't even that good. If someone as trash as Subaru Hase had learned it, then clearly Isaac was superior to the original Subaru Narukami. He claimed that meant he was above even the legendary Subaru. Subaru raised his hand slightly, asking Isaac whether he truly believed that. A split second later, Isaac's arm was severed and spiraled into the air. He stared at the blood pouring out in horror. Subaru said that wasn't the question he'd asked and marveled at Isaac's ability to ramble while avoiding it. He pressed the blade to Isaac's throat. Isaac began crying, realizing Subaru spoke of Subaru Hase in the third person. He asked in disbelief if Subaru really was Narukami. Subaru slid him across the chest. Isaac fell, bleeding heavily. Subaru said playtime was over and that he had already given Isaac more than enough service. Subaru Hase should be grateful he let him borrow his body. As Subaru walked back toward the inn, passers-by wondered aloud if he was another Subaru Narukami fanboy. They questioned why he wasn't ashamed to wear that mask in public. Subaru said he would maintain his policy of not showing his real face. Concealment was a huge advantage when opponents didn't know who they faced. Hatsuka's voice called out to him, apologizing for the wait. She looked extremely nervous as she introduced herself as the manager who had contacted him from Southern Entertainment. They shook hands and she admitted he really did resemble the original Subaru Narukami, as though he had come back to life. She wondered aloud if he was hiding his face because he was actually handsome. Subaru asked if something was wrong. She flustered, recalling John's warning to leave a perfect first impression, but she had already failed. He asked whether she had been a fan of Subaru Narukami. She answered, absolutely. He told her to relax, he wasn't the real one. She insisted she was his fan as well. She had watched him since he had 0 viewers. She had been his first viewer. She recited in detail every moment of his rise, from the first bat kill to every refined technique since. Subaru admitted she remembered more than he did. She said it felt like fate, which was why she had gone straight to the company and begged to become his manager. Determined to act professionally, she pulled out a contract. She briefly summarized it: ads, events, streams, clipped content, everything the company would prepare using his icon. All Subaru had to do was continue streaming. He asked if being a streamer was truly this easy. She said it was because he was the first to master lightning. The entire company, starting with director John, held him in high regard. She quietly told herself she needed to deliver the final push and asked if the contract terms were satisfactory. Subaru instead asked if all managers were like her. She said no, everyone else was far more reliable and professional. She wasn't saying she wasn't competent, but the others were on another level. Subaru clarified he didn't mean it like that. She felt overwhelmed, wondering whether she was worthy of managing someone of his aura. Subaru simply said he understood clearly that she was someone he could trust. She nearly burst from excitement as he asked her to take care of him. Her heart raced uncontrollably. Later that evening, he went live. His viewer count opened at 700. He wondered if this sudden spike was due to Hatsuka's announcement. Regardless, he decided to begin immediately. The stage was stage 6. Legend. Inside a tent, Pellis and Falcon reviewed the situation with other soldiers. Pellis asked whether their benefactor was on his way. Falcon confirmed it, though several knights voiced doubts. They questioned whether Subaru was truly strong. After all, he was not a knight. It seemed unbelievable that an outsider could have defeated the giant boss alone. They said unless Pellis saw it himself, it might have only been a minion. Pellis shouted, demanding how they could say such things. A soldier announced the benefactor had arrived. Pellis rushed to Subaru, asking if he was all right. Subaru said thanks to Pellis he could walk unaided. Some knights mocked him openly, doubting his strength and pointing to his suspicious mask. Subaru said it seemed they could not bring themselves to believe he had slain the giant, or perhaps they simply didn't want to believe it. Hatsuka whispered through the microphone channel. Thanks to a pre-saved pose, she could adjust the audio frequency so only viewers heard her voice. Subaru commented this was a useful feature in dull conversations. Subaru called the knights impudent, and chat loved his confidence. A man introduced himself as Dale, shaking Subaru's hand. Dale explained that though he had tried to protect the village, everyone had been trampled. Subaru asked what he meant. Dale explained that a giant even more dangerous than the boss had appeared. Most giants attacking them now were only lingering thoughts, echoes, but the one that arrived afterward was akin to a legend. He couldn't believe such a being still existed. Chat remarked that if Dale was telling the truth, that giant's power was comparable to something on the 8th floor. Subaru said they had no choice except to defeat it. Dale insisted Subaru only believed such a thing because he hadn't faced it. Pellis yelled that a legend said a lightning fragment rested atop Millennia Mountain, and only Subaru could find it. A flashback unfolded, villagers being slaughtered by giants. One spoke to his dead son, promising blood in his name. Subaru realized this was not a memory, this was happening now. The giant he had slain earlier must have been the chieftain's son. Subaru muttered that this trial truly sought to kill him. Chat agreed. Pellis explained they had roughly 3 days before the giants reached the camp. If Subaru could not find the lightning fragment by then, he should flee to save himself. Subaru insisted there was no trial in the tower that he could not clear. Chat immediately reacted. The phrase was too familiar, some recognized it. Subaru hurried to cover his slip as mission credits flooded in. He stopped the horse and dismounted at the mountain base. A lightning fragment was somewhere here. He touched the cliff face. Pellis said the fragment appeared in legends. Nobody knew whether it was a power, item, or even a person. Subaru asked if he knew how to obtain it. Pellis answered no, only its approximate location. But one thing was certain. The wielder of lightning once annihilated the giants. Back at Southern Entertainment, John asked Hatsuka what happened. She shouted that the contract had been finalized. John praised her. She had finally become a proper manager. He told her he had met with Hawkeye and needed to share something soon. Hatsuka collapsed on her bed in delight, saying it was finally time to watch the stream again. Seeing Subaru on screen and in person felt like a dream for her inner nerd. When Subaru suddenly repeated his old catchphrase, she bolted upright. Something from 20 years ago had surfaced naturally. Lightning cracked across Millennia Mountain as Subaru attacked the cliff, punching repeatedly. Chat questioned what he was doing. Subaru said he needed to determine whether the rock or his fist was sturdier. He punched harder and harder until he smiled. He had found something. Chat asked what it was. Subaru explained that although viewers couldn't feel it, something behind the rock radiated immense lightning and resonated with his own power. There was no doubt it was calling him. He released lightning into the cliffside. The stone resonated violently and a shockwave split open a hidden passage. Standing before the opening, he stepped inside as the system announced, entering the path where lightning walks. Exit impossible until stage is cleared. At the camp, Pellis and his men planned their defense over a map. Dale asked if Pellis really believed Subaru would obtain lightning. Pellis said he was certain. Dale pointed out that Subaru was still an outsider, yet Pellis trusted him so deeply. Pellis replied that Subaru had already proven his strength. A soldier argued that even lightning would not save them. He had seen the giant's true power firsthand. Pellis insisted they could still place their faith in Subaru just once without demanding anything in return. Suddenly, a scream echoed from outside. The ground shook as someone burst into the tent shouting that it had arrived. Footsteps thundered closer. Inside the cavern, Subaru found nothing but darkness. Chat asked what he was supposed to do. He explained that lightning, before discharging, was invisible, just scattered particles in the air. Of course, nothing could be seen. This was a trial that required searching without eyes. He felt something stir deeper inside the cave. He grabbed a rock and tossed it. It disintegrated instantly. He concluded the air itself was filled with unseen lightning. The deeper he went, the more intense it would become. The trial was testing endurance. If he couldn't withstand it, he would die. Chat begged him to stop, fearing he would lose lightning. Others donated missions. Subaru thanked them and continued forward. Back at the remote hideout, Sugar watched the stream until the door opened abruptly. He flinched, hiding his phone. The woman accused him of watching something inappropriate. He denied it. She teased him, saying his hair always grew faster when he lied. She scolded him for saying weird things. She said that because of his earlier remarks, she had stopped watching the stream, but she couldn't help herself. He tried to talk naturally, asking if she planned to relax on the sofa. Subaru's voice leaked from his phone. Sugar panicked, scrambling to mute it. She asked what was wrong with him. He told her not to mind him, insisting everything was fine. She grumbled and left. Sugar sighed in relief. If she discovered he was still watching the stream, she'd cause a scene. He admitted to himself that even if roles were reversed, Subaru would never forget about them. His way of speaking, his personality, everything felt just like the Subaru he remembered, except Subaru had never been so desperate for credits. He wondered what in the world was happening. Then she appeared behind him, placing a hand on his shoulder. She asked whether he really believed she wouldn't notice he was lying. He was 100 years too early to fool her. Sugar froze. He had messed up completely. Inside the cave, the system prompted, "Carve out the path of lightning." Subaru continued forward until a sharp surge struck his feet. Electricity coursed through him. Progress rose to 2.3%. His hand tingled familiar. He allowed the lightning to envelop him and pushed forward. As the long journey continued, progress steadily climbed. He told Chet he would be unable to read messages as he needed to focus on reaching the goal, though he intended to push even further if possible. Hawkeye, still watching, thought back to John's proposal about collaborating with Subaru. It had been a while since John had given him such a project. John had once told him that in entertainment, a streamer could only do half the work, the rest depended on external factors. Subaru's streams felt less like fan chat and more like a veteran's battlefield vlog. If Hawkeye joined forces with him, they might rise together. Hawkeye wondered if he could become a star like the original Blue Earth members. He snapped out of his thoughts, hearing Subaru grunt. Subaru's body was being ravaged by the lightning. The further he went, the more wounds accumulated. Still, he marched. Panting, Subaru explained that stronger lightning penetrated deeper into the body. The meridians throughout him, large and small, were beginning to open. Progress exceeded 20%. The minor meridians activated. His magic increased by 1. He vowed to master this no matter what. The Ren and Du channels were the body's central pathways, and the smaller meridians connected them. The original Subaru Haas had not undergone meridian purification, so he needed a shortcut. This lightning shocked him relentlessly. Blood spilled from beneath his mask, leaving bloody footprints behind him. Hatsuko watched in bed, eyes wide, asking if he was really attempting this while moving, relying entirely on external lightning instead of mana or internal energy. Hatsuko watched the stream from her bed, horrified. She knew the pain Subaru endured had to be unimaginable. People couldn't even stay seated while watching him push through it. Anyone else would have fainted long ago. Even though dying in a trial didn't affect reality, the pain was no different from the real world. She couldn't understand why he went this far. Subaru's progress reached 50%. The meridian activation continued and his magic increased again. He murmured that everything was his fault, as though he were the one who had killed them. He remembered telling his comrades that there was no trial they couldn't clear, that in the end he would always win, that they didn't need to worry. He had said these things before entering the 8th floor. If he hadn't said something so careless, his eyes bled as he forced himself onward, remembering Itsuki's smirking face. Fueled by rage, he staggered forward, insisting it was all his fault, but eventually his body collapsed. He fell into a dream. A wide open field stretched before him. He stared in confusion, then spotted his friends relaxing by a tree as though nothing had happened. His heart raced. He called out each of their names and sprinted toward them, tears building. Maybe it had all been just a terrible dream. He choked out that he had seen something disgusting and wanted to tell them about it. But when they turned, their faces were twisted into nightmares. They blamed him for their deaths, saying they hadn't wanted to die. Subaru froze in terror. Chino accused him of acting high and mighty without protecting them in the end. The campfire behind them turned blood red. Flames swallowed their bodies as they screamed, turning to ash while Subaru cried out for them not to leave. He collapsed to his knees, begging them to wait. He still wanted to see their faces. He jolted awake. Forcing himself upright, he whispered that this was the hallucination often triggered during meridian opening. He had nearly fallen into chi deviation. His progress was now 98%, granting him another increase in magic. He didn't know who created such a cruel trial, but he was grateful for one thing. It reminded him why he was alive, solely to kill Itsuki. Meanwhile, back in the town, everyone stared upward in horror. A towering giant stood before their gate, grinning. Soldiers whispered if this was the true boss. One muttered that the masked man had run away in the end. Pellis shouted at them, furious, they should stop doubting and dishonoring their benefactor. They tried to justify themselves, but Pellis called their behavior shameful and unworthy of knights. Dale placed a steadying hand on his shoulder, reminding him that before blaming others, they must first remember their duty, to protect the village. He drew his blade, declaring that knights were not the ones to be protected, they were the ones who protected. If they were going to die, they would do so with honor. The soldiers rallied and charged. Back inside the trial, Subaru's progress hit 99%. He saw a glowing orb of lightning ahead. Judging by how close he was to completion, that had to be the true objective. His fatigue reached 97%, blood soaking his body. The system warned him to recover, but he stepped forward anyway. At the same time, Dale vaulted over the village wall, slicing into the giant's leg. Blood burst forth as the creature roared and smashed its fist downward. Dale narrowly evaded the blow. Pellis charged next, leaping from the giant's knee with his blade raised. He unleashed a cross-shaped slash across the monster's face, slicing chunks away as the giant collapsed. Soldiers cheered, they had done it. They stabbed and kicked the corpse, celebrating the death of what they thought was the final boss. But Dale told Pellis he was wrong. This wasn't the one he had warned about. The same soldiers who had doubted Subaru bragged about their victory, calling Pellis and Dale amazing. A massive shadow darkened the ground. Dale pointed upward. That was the real giant. Back at the trial, Subaru reached 99.99% completion. He stretched his trembling hand toward the orb and seized it, whispering to Itsuki that he would make him beg for forgiveness and take his head as a souvenir. Lightning surged violently around him. At last, it seemed over. Then agony tore through him. His eyes flew open as the meridians fully unlocked. His magic was amplified by 20% and every single stat increased by 2. He cursed between ragged breaths. If lightning had to hit him again, it could have given some warning. He collapsed backward. Stage 6, cleared. John, watching the stream, muttered there was a limit to recklessness. Subaru didn't seem cut out to be a streamer. Hawkeye called him immediately, excited. He said he had watched the stream and couldn't explain properly in his excitement, but Subaru was a star among stars, both as a player and a streamer. John admitted he'd thought Subaru too reckless, more of a natural player than a streamer. Hawkeye said that was precisely what made him special. Viewers craved someone who felt like a real player, just like the original Subaru Narukami. Watching this new Subaru grow into that form thrilled them. It was like witnessing the birth of a second coming. John called it insane. Back in the cave, Subaru forced himself to stand. Chat cheered that he was alive. His vision blurred and fatigue read 81 lower thanks to his stat boosts. The last surge of lightning had been unexpected, but the results were excellent. Since he had cleared the missions, he collected his rewards, bringing his credits above 20,000 once again. Still not enough to upgrade Wedge of Greed, but perhaps defeating the giant would provide what he needed. More importantly, thanks to the power he had just acquired, he finally had the key item to beat the monster. It was called Lightning Spear, a legendary rank weapon forged from condensed lightning. It had only one use but unleashed a catastrophic single strike. Subaru said you didn't normally see something this broken unless you reached the 8th floor. Though it didn't resemble a traditional spear, its destructive force was equivalent to a tactical nuke. High-rank items often shifted in form based on conditions. Whatever it looked like, it was time to kill the giant. Back at the village, Pellis stared up at the monstrous figure looming over them. The giant lifted its head and roared. Strangely enough, it was also called Greg, like the wolf. The soldier who had earlier cried about it now laughed hysterically, bowing before the creature and begging for mercy, claiming he wasn't like the other foolish humans. The giant Greg questioned why the man dared lump him together with vile, filthy creatures. Realizing he had offended the monster, the man panicked. Dale yelled for him to move, then he told Pellis to take the villagers and flee as far as possible. As Dale shouted, the giant crushed him instantly, scattering gore across the ground. Pellis cried out. Their escape route was gone. Pellis felt despair choking him, convinced no path to victory remained. But he grit his teeth. He knew who had killed the giant's son. Greg demanded to know who it was. Pellis, shaking, pointed toward the mountain and claimed the human who killed his son had gone there to obtain power to destroy all giants. He prayed the giant would take the bait. Greg stared for a moment, then declared it a lie. He said he could sense falsehood. Was the killer not actually there, or had Pellis simply pointed at random with that pathetic sword? Before he could interrogate further, a massive lightning surge exploded atop Millennia Peak. Greg and Pellis both turned as spiraling thunder cracked open the sky, striking the mountain. Pellis whispered that it had to be their benefactor. Stage 7, lightning began. This was the final stage of the second floor. Subaru warned that if anything stronger than this giant appeared, they couldn't call this a second-floor trial anymore. Chat begged him to run. There was no way he could fight something so massive. Subaru said they didn't need to overthink it. He only needed one strike. His current power could handle that. He had to end it before someday arrived. The lightning spear began charging. A pillar of light shot into the sky. Pellis watched as the heavens swirled like a vortex, gathering around Subaru's hand. But the startup was slow. Fatigue accumulated rapidly. Wedge of Greed tried to resist, but the legendary weapon overwhelmed it. Subaru coughed blood, saying his skill level was too low for an item like this. Fatigue, 88. Charge rate, 50%. He forced himself to endure. Chat complained that this entire stage had been nothing but Subaru getting obliterated. Subaru glanced down the mountain. Had the giants noticed? With how flashy the charge was, it would be impossible for them not to. The charge reached 78%. Greg spotted him, shocked that someone was wielding lightning. He realized immediately that this must be the human who killed his son. He advanced. Pellis tried to draw him back, but he still had the rest of the tribe to deal with. Greg swore to avenge his son Ilda and charged toward the mountain, tearing through the forest with sweeping strikes. The lightning spear reached 88%. Greg closed the distance. Subaru calculated a 50-50 chance of hitting the target. He couldn't look away, not after what one of his old comrades once taught him about spear throwing. Throwing was not about predicting trajectories, weights, arcs, or even thinking. You simply blasted it forward with absolute conviction. He still wasn't throwing a normal spear. That made things easier. He didn't need to throw it, he needed to fire it. The charge reached 95%. Greg climbed the mountain barehanded. Chat screamed for Subaru to release it already. Subaru insisted he had to wait until the last second. Greg dug into the mountainside and launched himself into the air above the peak. The spear reached 100%. Lightning consumed Subaru's hand, roaring like a living storm. He planted his foot and hurled the spear. It tore through the sky and struck Greg directly in the skull. The giant reeled, lightning detonating inside his head. His body plummeted off the cliff, followed by a massive explosion at the base. He tried to speak one last time before his body crumbled to ash. Subaru stepped forward as the chat exploded in hysteria. Stage 7 cleared. He gained level-ups, stats, 5,000 points, and an item called Heart of Lightning. He wondered what it was. As it glowed brightly, the world vanished. He opened his eyes inside a violet subspace. A towering deity looked down at him. His heart throbbed painfully, his body frozen. More deities appeared, all nameless. He wondered if they were trying to speak as the heart of lightning pulsed in his hands. The scene faded, returning him to the sky atop the mountain. A notification appeared. Main scenario, lightning. Clues could be found in the village using the Heart of Lightning. Chat asked why he was sitting still. Had he fainted again? Subaru wondered whether what he saw had been a cutscene or reality. He apologized and stood up, needing to accept his mission rewards. His credits surpassed 40,000. Chat told him to hurry to the village. Subaru said he was ending the stream. He was tired. He signed off. The next day, at the inn, Hatsuka congratulated him. Subaru asked if ending the stream that way had been all right. She said it was perfect. He hadn't noticed while fighting, but the stream had peaked at more than 3,000 viewers. Subaru said he hadn't checked the numbers, he was focused on the trial. Hatsuka told him he had nothing to worry about. A rookie streamer breaking 3,000 viewers was extraordinary, and the timing of his stream cutoff created perfect suspense, like a drama between episodes. Subaru admitted he had partly planned it in the moment and intended to check rewards with viewers in the next stream so his surprise would feel natural. Hatsuka smiled. He got it. John's worries were unnecessary. Then she said she had a present for him today, one he absolutely could not refuse. A very special present.
Guys, that's the end of the video. If you liked this video, please leave a comment in the comment section. Also subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. Like the video and share it too. Thank you for watching and see you next time again.